Tears turn to laughter, that child long ago. My soul starts to linger, it's home I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me along to that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam. Wherever I go.
There are places here like Mabu and Margery and Shettycamp. There are signs here in Gaelic offering 100,000 welcomes. This is Inverness County on the west coast of Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia. The pride of place here is illustrated by the story of a man who wrote a letter to a newspaper after the Strait of Canso was bridged by a causeway in 1955. He was very proud. He said, now that Cape Breton Island is linked to the mainland, Canadians from Atlantic to Pacific would surely be unified because, he said, now we are all Cape Bretoners. Well, put on your dancing shoes because we're headed for a ceilidh and a taste of life in Inverness County. Hot August night. The eastern extremity of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, a place where music is to the land as it is to the people. This place of Archie Neil Chisholm.
Wherever you go, once you come into the island of Cape Breton and you're in Inverness County, you will see that word Ciath Míle Fáilte. And that's an expression you find. It means 100,000 welcomes.
Dances, ceilidhs, gatherings, whether you're from away or whether Inverness County is home. No matter, the music takes down the barriers. Ask Hugh Allen Buddy McMaster.
Go to a dance and play for a dance, and everybody having a good time, big smiles on their face. And well, it makes me feel great makes me feel happy to see other people happy and enjoying themselves.
It's a culture that's unique and yet blended. You could go to a celebration of any kind and you will find Scottish, Irish, and Acadian French all playing the same music, all speaking in a common language and all of that, and yet let them go back to their own homes and they retain their own culture and their own habits.
The territory has always given James St. Clair a grounding.
The land here has, I think, influenced the way in which people behave, the way in which they speak. I think it has influenced the art. I think that the weather is very much a part of people's minds, and people have sentences about it being a large day, both in English and in Gaelic, and it means really that it's a day when you can almost see forever. And you feel expansive and hopeful.
18,000 people live here, approximately 15% of Cape Breton's total. For one interested in people, Marianne Ducharme finds herself very much at home.
We're from upstate New York. We've been here about 14 years, and I love it more than when I started. I edit a newspaper called Participaper. What I want to do in this publication is to show the people to themselves, not only in the present tense, but in the past tense, to remind them of the individuals who made this place what it is.
This is what it is. 130,000 square kilometers of alpine plateau, lakes, valleys, hard rock granite, domain of the bald eagle. You could say that here, the landscape dominates.
It's a standard phrase in Inverness County to say that that house or those buildings have a nice stand. And that really means that the buildings look well on that piece of property, that they fit into the hill in the background or to the brook or river that's nearby, so that when you look at the property, it looks suitable, well placed. I think also people have given their buildings here a kind of life. One of the things that influenced my enthusiasm for architecture was the way in which people talked about their buildings. How is your house? It's almost like asking, how is your grandmother?
Basque fishermen knew it. John Cabot logged it. As part of Acadia, it was Ile Royale. When control traded from France to Britain, those that came attached themselves each to a corner of the terrain.
The first people to arrive were Scottish, and Inverness County is largely Scottish, although we have quite a percentage of Acadian and Irish. In fact, we could find almost any ethnic group represented somewhere in Inverness County. The first Irish hit for the green land, the land that was easy to farm. The French came along the coast where they were accustomed to fishing. And the Scot, believe it or not, hit for the Highlands. Wherever he could find a place that resembled his homeland, he went.
Crossing oceans, spanning ages, the sound of the old country.
From the lone shieling in the misty islands, mountains divide us and the waste of the sea, yet still the blood is strong and the heart is Highland, and we in dreams behold the Hebrides. But if you will listen carefully to Scottish music, you'll find all the sadness and the pathos and the heartbreak that these people felt when they were leaving their homes.
There is a sense, I think, in Inverness County of that the hills and the trees and the brooks and the buildings partake of the personality of the people who settled here. It isn't strange, I think, that there's a Mary's Hill not very far from here, named after a very early settler there by the name of Mary MacPhail. I don't think it's at all strange that we still speak of Long John's Bridge. If you were in Hamilton, Ontario, for instance, and you met a group of people who were Cape Bretoners from Inverness County, and you mentioned going across Long John's Bridge to the dance in Glencoe, they would know exactly what you meant.
Reaching from the Strait of Canso in the south to the Highlands National Park and North Cape, the county rises sometimes 539 meters, 1,750 feet above the sea. There are traces throughout the land, wayposts that speak its history.
The place names tell a great deal about what people valued. Some of the place names, such as Mull River, relate to the place where the immigrant family came from, Skye Glen. Skye and Mull. Campbell's Mountain identifies the people who lived there. The Scots and the Irish looked back to the old country. The Acadians tended to identify the places by the look of the terrain, of what the soil looked like, what the rock looked like, but how you could pick it out when you were sailing along, such as Cap Rouge, the cape where there are red rocks.
The Indian names, the Micmacs, left us some beautiful names like Waikakama, the meeting of the waters. Cheticamp, it's not a French name, it's a Micmac name. And with all their hospitality and all the beauty of Cheticamp and the lovely hotels there, the Indians call it a poor place to stay. That's what Cheticamp means, a poor place to stay.
To the north, Cheticamp took hold as a fishing station in 1752 with the arrival of Jersey Island merchants who encouraged the settlement by Acadian fishermen and their families.
They did business on credit. The fisherman would never receive a penny for his work. They would allow him to take the flour and the oatmeal and the molasses and whatever, salt, whatever he wanted home, and they kept that marked. Now, but in the early days, they were quite illiterate, and they couldn't know how to keep a book or a budget or anything like that, so that the businessman always wound up the season having the fisherman owing him, so that he would still have the hooks in him for the next spring.
In the community today, the landmark L'Église Saint-Pierre stands to the memory of Father Pierre Fisset. It was Fisset's undaunted efforts that led the Acadians to economic independence earlier this century, introducing the cooperative movement as a means of autonomy. Isolation, historically, has bred a tenacity for survival here, and this tenacity looked by the early 19th century as if it would finally be rewarded.
The disconnectedness of these people who came here banded them together to form a society. The Loyalists and the Acadians and the Irish and the Scots, and to some extent the Jersey families, saw in Cape Breton, saw in Inverness County, a place that they felt would prosper.
One of the things that I enjoy most about doing the newspaper is meeting with elderly people. The elderly people have lived through so much and they have experienced so much. They have such wisdom to them. And so I have this sense I have to get to these people and I have to talk to them and I have to get this on paper so it's not lost. You know, as long as books lives, history lives. You know, something that I just can't get enough of is going to an older person, well, tell me your ghost stories, you know, or tell me your stories about what it was like in the Depression, or tell me a funny story. Any of those, you know, things, I could listen to them for days and days and never get tired of them.
1929, I went to Cork Lake, Ontario, and then 36, I think it was 37. I was in Timmins, Ontario. I walked all over the place to see whether there be another shaft, whether would move there to work, whether be there.
Lucky and Mary McClellan are Inverness. Its character, strength, adaptability, accommodating the historic boom and bust cycles of the region's resource-based economy.
When you came back to the homestead here,
yeah.
Okay, you were already married?
Yeah, yeah, we got married in
had 5 children.
And you had 5 children.
We came home, yeah.
And that was in
no electricity,
No
no
electricity.
mail, no snowplow. We were here like hermits in the snow.
It affects every turn of life here, the music, that is.
When the women would decide that they wanted to have a quilting party or a milling frolic, somebody would be given a signal and they would start a Gaelic song. Dee-die, 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 dum, dee-die, dee-da-dee, dee, dum, dee-da-dee, da-dee, die, dum. And the beat is going on like that, fast, and they raised the cloth and hit the table and pushed it this way, and they took up the slack from the next fellow. And this went around for hours. Sometimes they would stop for a little irrigation, and by the time an hour and a half was ready, if there was enough Mountain Dew around, they didn't want to stop.
Up until the beginning of this century, life remained insular, with farming and inshore fisheries the principal livelihoods. But then a wave would spin the island's economy overnight. Coal mining, coupled to steel manufacture, put Cape Breton on the rise, with Inverness capitalizing on the boom. Railways tied the region from Lake Ainslie to the Margaree. The good times were felt, but not for long. By the 30s, the mines were depleted, steel mills outdated. Bust. In the aftermath, industrial decline, labor unrest, Inverness County would live through an exodus unprecedented in island life.
I think the out-migration had a major effect on the way in which people felt about this place, that it looked as though everybody who had ambition was leaving, and it looked as though the only place to succeed was away, down the road, in the Boston States, in Vancouver, in Toronto. And certainly there are far more people living in those places who have their origins in Inverness County than there are people now living in Inverness County.
Unthwarted, unchanged, a character of people, and the music.
We have the three cultures that play violin. Scottish, Irish, and French have been here for generations, and they all played the violin, but still they do have a little different flavor there. You can detect it.
There is this sense of culture which may have its expression, well, probably most of all in music. The square dances, the step dancing is similar, and it may all be part of a great blending of cultures. I'm not sure anybody now could unravel the Irish influence, the Acadian influence, the Scottish influence in present-day step dancing.
One to another, a people that fate has bonded in time, space, expression.
When we went places as children and as very young people, our grandparents and our parents and our aunts and uncles and so on would recount to us tales about places that gave the place a kind of personality. And there were always people connected with brooks and streams and hillsides and farmsteads and houses in the village. When we were returning from wherever we went, we were kind of expected to retell those stories. It was a way of keeping children amused, I think, but I think it was also a way of passing on traditions. And when I grew older, I discovered that what I had been told was quite accurate and almost always was substantiated in written records.
There wasn't the television and the radio, and so people entertained each other by telling stories, and they were wonderful storytellers. They were actors, and they could project things in their voice and in their manner so expertly, and they were very practiced in what they did in storytelling. And so it was a great tradition, wonderful tradition, and it's particularly rich in Cape Breton. There's something about this island that brings out poets, writers, artists, sculptors, dreamers, and idealists, and not only presently, but historically. There are many artists, for instance, Peter Rankin, who is a very talented man. And he would love nothing better than to spend his entire time just painting. But the economic climate here doesn't allow that, and so he fishes with his brother.
Down here in this area. Yes.
Is this from an aerial photo?
No, actually, I went up on the mountain and did a sketch.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
So you climbed the mountain to
Yeah.
do that. So explain to me, exactly where is this?
Well, that's the wharf just below
Uh-huh.
here. But
Okay.
we're looking at a whole view of it from.
And this is like a
from
little
the
salt
northern
marshes
end.
there.
Mhm.
So you find people here with a multitude of occupations. So I think it makes an interesting blend of people, because they can be both, the singer and the poet, and the miner and the farmer.
Within this setting, where traditional and new ideas live side by side, we are prompted to ponder the strength embodied within the Inverness landscape.
The thing that has remained most constant, I think, all the time is something that has to do with creativity. I think there is something in the air and something in the ground. I think there is something in the sky when the sky is the most stormy or the most clear that encourages people towards creativity. You've only to go to a summer concert here and sit on a hillside and look at old people and young people just enthralled by being outdoors and listening to music. There is that blend of wind and sun and daisies and tunes brought together.
A hot August night in Inverness County.
The quality of the cultural life here will continue to enthuse people, will continue to inspire them, and will continue to reveal the very soul of this place.
Every twist and turn in the road, every mountain, every valley, every beach. I mean, these are all precious things. And when you leave this place, somehow there's something drawing you back. You have to come back.
It means everything to me, and that's why I love it. I tried to give as much back to Marguerite Forks as Marguerite Forks gave to me. Summarize the whole thing in saying, it's home and I love it, that's all.